Listeners of the T.R.O.N podcast, the Randomness of Nothing. This is your host, Rashad Woods. And today I have a very special guest today. And this is one of the topics that hasn't gotten a lot of attention on this show. And I was fortunate enough to be able to carve out some of her time. It's behavior economist, pricing analyst, all-around financial guru, Etinosa Agbonlahor. Thank you so much for your time, ma'am. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Rashad. I'm excited for the conversation.
This is big time for me because, this is a topic that, almost intimidates people because it's about pricing and whether you're underpricing, and you're a CEO of your own company, Decision Alpha. So first of all, let's dive a bit into your financial background. You're an author, you're a podcaster, you're a public speaker, and you have a lot of behavioral economist background as well, too, which kind of is, that's very interesting. That doesn't get a lot of attention in mainstream. So please, can you dive into that for us?
Yes, absolutely. So behavioral economics essentially studies the psychology behind how we make financial decisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we don't all make financial decisions in a vacuum, and we don't make it like we are, spreadsheets walking around trying to get the optimal value from everything that we buy.
Yeah.
Instead, things like the context influences what we buy. Things like the reference point, what we compare other things to, influences what we buy. We
Right.
tend to be loss averse, meaning we don't want to lose money. In fact, we feel the pain of losing more than we feel the privilege of gaining something. All of those things inform and influence how we make financial decisions. And so as a behavioral economist, what I'm doing is looking at, okay, how do people make financial decisions? How do we influence the environment to make sure that people are getting to a place optimally for their financial well-being? And with Decision Alpha, what we've done is taken that lens from a consumer perspective, from everyday people who are trying to save more, invest better, live better financially, and brought it to both small business owners and enterprise customers also are making financial decisions and need their customers to make financial decisions about their products and services.
Right.
So we're essentially shifting that. How do we make sure decisions to how do we help businesses and bring their customers along that journey as well?
Well, I thought it was fascinating because you had a psychology background as well too, so it plays in the dynamics of pricing and being able to study human behavior. Based on pricing, it's not good enough just to benchmark when it comes to your competitors, right? Because you see often, obviously, there's a lot of, I don't want to say copycatters, but there's a lot of similar products that are out there for services. There's Maytag, and then you have GE. And so how do you have a premium price, but at the same time, you sell a similar product, and people will sit back and say, I'll pick the closest price to where my price point is at. So how does that get navigated with similar companies?
Yeah. So with that, I talk about this notion of differentiation. So it's almost like the experience of, let's say you want to buy a white t-shirt, right? You want a white t-shirt. If you went to a basic market, a bazaar or something, or even a TJ Maxx, right? The experience is going to be you walk in, somebody might greet you, they might not greet you. You get to walk through the closet, the hangers, and pick whatever it is you want. You're basically one of many. You're like a utility, right?
Yes.
Whereas if you went to a higher end store like a Dior or whatever, you're going to come in, they're going to greet you. You might be sat down. They might bring the different kind of options to you. They might offer you a water or a drink, right? The experience is very different. But at one level, at one tier, what you expect to pay is much less, and it might be the exact same product, the exact same quality, made by the same factory. It's just the experience that surrounds it, that differentiates it and creates the notion of value for those two experiences. And so coming back to your question around how do we then define what is premium, or how do we kind of separate or set ourselves apart? It's differentiation. What do you do? What do you know that is specific to you? You're a tax keeper or you're a bookkeeper, and there's 100,000 bookkeepers in any given market. You say to yourself, okay, can I niche down? I know bookkeepers who only work with real estate investors. I know bookkeepers who only work with real estate investors who are doing active deals, which means they only work with folks who are doing Airbnb and high volume. I know bookkeepers who specifically will only work with people who are on the more passive side. We only work with folks who are doing real estate, they're renting long-term, but they might have, more than 20 doors, right? By niching down, it allows you to have a conversation with the exact customer who's looking for you and say to them, this is the value that we bring because we only work with people like you. We know you. We understand your pain points, and you can speak it that way. And so you go from being a generic bookkeeper who pops up on Google next to 100,000 other people, and you become somebody who is in the pool that your specific clients are looking for. So that's one way of setting yourself apart, is that differentiation.
Right. And, it's almost like I know it sounds like, cliche, be almost like a high-end hairstylist, right? The more like exclusive that they do or higher price point they have for hair, by default, you think they have some sort of higher quality that they can do things that your generic barber, and I love my barbers, by the way, would not be able to actually do. You're like, what is this experience like, right?
Yeah. And I fall in for that. I fall in for that on the real estate side as well. I switched over from having a fantastic tax person. This person came up to me at a real estate conference and said, we only work with real estate investors. We know all these tips and tricks that you can do as you're a real estate investor. And I was like, that sounds great. They were also more expensive. So in my mind, I was like, they're more expensive. They're niche down. Maybe they're better than the person I've been using who can handle the complexities of my tax situation, having worked across different countries, but also now doing the real estate thing. So I switch over to them. They're terrible. They don't know what they're doing.
Oh my gosh.
There's not that much difference in real estate taxes if you're not doing complicated things.
Oh my
And so I
God.
had to go back to my old guys and be like, listen, I'm so sorry. What happened was, and you need to fit me in for this tax season.
Yeah.
So if you are differentiating and you're saying you can do something, it is also important that you can actually deliver and you actually know what you're talking
Unquestionably.
about.
Right.
But it works, right? It
Yes.
works. They got me to move over to them and spend money with them.
Right. When your background is varied. I mean, you're a globetrotter, right? You've been in Australia, you've been in UK, you've been in Africa. Well, can you dive into your educational background a bit? Because this is one of the more fascinating backgrounds that I've had a chance to interview on the shows. How did you actually get your start in finance, and what was it like diving into different countries, their currencies, their governments, their structure of communication and finance? Can you dive into that?
Yeah, so undergrad in the US, had worked I'm from Nigeria. I'm Nigerian and American, so I'd worked in Nigeria for a little bit, did my undergrad in the US, did a master's in the UK, ended up working at a job at a bank in Australia, then worked at an investment bank here in the States. So I've kind of done the roundabout. What I will say in terms of the differences between countries, when it comes to how we perceive value, because everything pricing and money is like, how do you perceive value, right?
Mhm.
That's the real question. When it comes to that, people tend to be the same in that realm. So we all make value judgments relative to a reference point. If you get a bonus of $10,000 and you discover all of your coworkers got a $20,000 bonus, at 10,000 bonus, it looks like it's like an insult. What I do wrong? I want to talk to the management, right? You got 10,000 and you figure out that everybody else around you actually got 3,000. You feel like I did something great. This is fantastic. Right?
Yeah.
The comparison matters a lot. So we all
Of
think in
course.
that way.
Yeah.
But there are nuances across the markets as well. So Australians tend to care less about like fairness and perceived kind of notions of what's right, what is fair, what is everybody else getting. We want to make that comparisons. In the UK, there tends to be a lot more trust in authority. So their financial council has found and done some research that shows they want to know who's the authority, who's this coming from, which makes sense.
Right.
They have lived under a hierarchy and a bit of a monarchy for a long time.
Okay.
In America, we tend to be as soon as possible. Right now, we'll pay a premium to have things faster.
For sure.
And in Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, I think that's Esther Duflo and I want to say it's Banerjee. They won a Nobel Prize for their work in like economics for the global South. But basically, they found that emerging markets, Nigeria, South Africa, etc., people tend to be more loss averse. So because like things change every day, so we tend to be more sensitive to like risk and loss, and so they will sometimes pay a premium on notions of like guaranteed. I will pay more money to know that you're going to bring this thing to my house at this time.
Absolutely.
Versus somebody else in a different country. So those are some quirks of the different kind of countries.
What's the involvement of the government when it comes to the monetary systems in these countries? I know we're a very free capitalistic society here where it's more laissez-faire, so to speak, where we kind of let businesses dictate the prices amongst themselves. Are there any structures in place that you had to adjust to as you went to those respective countries and said, you can only, like, for example, pharmaceuticals in a lot of countries are regulated at the government level where hey, this is exactly what you're going to sell this drug at per their, health department, or, in the UK, what is the NHS, they negotiate with pharmaceutical firms. Is there anything that you saw that was adjusted when it comes to your business model?
Yeah, so I will say that we have the narrative of fairness in America, but it's not actually always the truth. Is actually not quite laissez-faire. So, for example, in Australia, they have something called open banking, where you can transfer your data for up to a year, your banking data for up to a year. You can have that be made available to any banking institution that you want.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, wow.
I can transfer money by just putting in somebody's phone number into my account. It's connected to their bank account. I can transfer money easily back and forth across anybody in the entire country.
Oh, wow.
In America, that is impossible. And sometimes I see that different people have Zelle limits. Like some
Yeah.
people have $3,000, some people have two. That's ridiculous to me. I'm sorry, I don't understand it. We have the narrative of this is a fair and open and you can do whatever you want, but actually it's actually a much more tightly regulated financial system in America than in a lot of other places. Also in Nigeria, you can transfer money back and forth to whoever. You go to the market, everyone pulls out a POS system. You can transfer the money to my account.
Really?
It's not even like credit card, debit card. It's type in some numbers on your phone, the money is transferred.
That's
right?
amazing.
So I will say, like, for different things, I think it does depend on the government and the stance they've taken in terms of healthcare and how mature they are and kind of the different influences. But I will say when it comes to banking and ease of access to funds, use of funds, etc. In some places, the narrative says one thing, but the reality is very different, and it's the other way in other places.
Well, that shows my global ignorance when it comes to how the world works, and that's one of the reasons I'm fortunate enough to talk to you on the show. My question is that you said one of your points when it comes to Decision Alpha is stop underpricing and go beyond benchmarking. And when I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, it says hey, you could be leaving up to like 11% on the table. What, in profit, what do companies do when it's business to business specifically that they are leaving on the table that your company assists with?
Yeah. So what we do and what the research has found is that a 1% increase in prices can drive up to 11% downstream increase in profits.
Oh, wow.
Right. So obviously it depends on the volume and the business, etc. But there is that link has been established. And so what we do for business owners who come to us, and it's usually that they're not confident in their prices, right? It's not that they're not making money. It's not that they're not turning a profit. It is that I'm not sure that I'm not leaving money on the table. I'm not sure that this is not right. Like I don't have that confidence. And so what we do with business owners like that is, first of all, establish and understand how do customers actually value what it is that you're bringing to them. Because a lot of times when people are benchmarking, they're just copying what competitors are doing, and they don't know if they're copying the competitors' mistakes. They don't know if they are actually offering more value, but they're priced a little bit lower, right? Yeah. Everyone says I do, everyone is a lawyer, but my lawyer does a lot of stuff and charges me the same as somebody who doesn't do that much stuff, right? So that benchmarking and copying competitors can be to the detriment of any business owner. What we come in and do is do that customer research around, well, how do customers actually perceive you? Right? What do they value in your services? And then that helps us get two things. First of all, the quantitative, what should you be charging based on how customers perceive you? But then also allows us to then define what we're talking about with regard to like the bazaar and the high-end store. Are you a high-end store? Can we niche down and lean in here? Or does it make sense to double down on the low end scale and we go after more volume? I just had a conversation with a business owner yesterday, and we're talking through her pricing model, recommended moving to a different kind of pricing model, unlocked $19,000 in potential revenue for her.
Wow.
In one conversation. Just, why are you doing it this way? It should be this way. Everyone else does it this way. Why are you offering a flat fee? You could be offering a percentage. Oh, how much is the percentage everybody else asks for? 20%. If you offer 20%, you could be at 15,000 plus the other profit that you're making from the other streams of revenue you have. So those are the kind of things that we do where it's not a heavy lift. You don't have to dramatically go out and do something completely different. But in the conversations and with the research, we do unlock real value for the business owners who work with us.
What's the reception from the CFO and the financial team, when it feels, because, I don't know, and this is just me just speaking just from the outside looking in. Is it a eureka moment, thank you, or is it kind of an ego crushing moment when it comes to this is my wheelhouse and somebody's kind of coming in and telling me how to price my products?
It's usually we're at the table because they've invited us. Usually if it's an enterprise level conversation, it's that the CFO has a perspective, this chief revenue officer has another perspective, the product team has opinions as well. So everyone kind of is singing from a different playbook. And usually in companies like that, nobody has full accountability for pricing. Right. So there's no one person who is like, this is all mine. It's usually like a mix of accountabilities. So in those instances, we're coming in and helping, first of all, just ground in, this is how customers understand and perceive value. This is how they're going to think about it. These are some things that you need to know from a behavioral economics perspective. And once we are aligned on that perception, once we can all be singing from the same playbook in terms of what matters, then we can go do the pricing research, etc. So it's less like here's a stranger coming in to like change your work, and a lot more like, there was a problem, we're helping you fix the problem, and now let's have the conversation about what pricing changes look like.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So when did you start your company? When did you start this company?
We've been below the line for about a year plus, above the line at some point this year, earlier in the spring. So below the line meaning unofficially doing the work above
I was
the
trying,
line.
I wasn't going to ask because I didn't want to sound silly, but when it started coming, when you started saying it, I started kind of piecing it together. Oh,
yeah.
So you deal strictly business to business right now, right? So was that the best entry level? Because obviously business consumer can be a little bit more ebbs and flows of consumer. Did it feel better to go strictly to business to start out?
That's what we're dealing with pricing. It almost implies like it's a business, right? You're selling something, right? Versus if it's a consumer, do you mean like working with like a creator or a hobbyist or something?
Or just the final consumer. So right now, let's say when you mean business to business, let's say somebody's a pen maker and they're selling to selling to school districts or selling to trade shows and things like that, and they want to make sure that they're respectively pricing correctly with this particular market, as opposed to like a party store that's selling to the general public, so to speak.
Yes. So where they're doing high volume, kind of more in a retail space, we don't lean necessarily in that space unless it's coming in to help shape the pricing strategy. Usually because they're doing a lot of volume, so they've got tools that are looking at what's selling, how fast is it selling, etc. There's a lot more quant that goes into that. We can help with the pricing strategy of where do you place it, what's the narrative around it, etc. Going directly business to business, especially both SaaS businesses. So you're building a software, something that hasn't been done before. Should we use subscriptions, etc.? Should we offer seats? We have really good conversations and really good work there. And more with service businesses, consultants, lawyers, doctors who run their own practices, like the concierge medicine, lawyers who run their own firm. It's a more straightforward conversation because a doctor has been trained to be an excellent doctor. They have not been trained to be an excellent business owner, right? A lawyer has been trained to be a fabulous lawyer. They've not been trained to be a phenomenal business owner. Right. So there's a lot more value add on that space is what we're finding now.
That's wonderful because the reality about it is that typically most people would actually call around, so to speak, and fake the client call. Hey, how much do you charge per hour? And then next thing you know, they kind of it's $250, $350, and then they're like, okay, I'll just price this at $300, and that's not really any research, so to speak. That's just sort of just benchmarking it. But to your point, if you have certain accolades and you have certain things that you've done globally with high level clients, you could charge that $500 per hour because you have something else, another level of expertise that you bring to the table as well too. And that is a premium price point because you provide a higher level of service. It's just the fear of having that.
Yeah, and also knowing who your target market is, right? Like you're not going to charge small business owners the same as you're charging soccer moms who are doing something for a hobby. Like it's understanding who do I actually really want to work with? Why do I like working with? Okay, how do I speak their language?
Absolutely. So I know you also do a podcast as well too, and it says, from my understanding, it was my first house, and it also talks about like real estate investing and things like that. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, her first house. I started the podcast to help women and other people who wanted to get into real estate, but maybe were nervous because I think real estate is it's a bigger size check than what a lot of people are used to kind of, writing out. It's a riskier deal to most people's minds. So I just wanted to start out because I wanted to inspire people, but also I wanted to learn from amazing people who are doing this. So I've had people on the podcast who, they have 240 doors. I have people who have been investing since they were 20 and now they're 80 years old. They've literally been investing for longer than I've been alive. I've had people on the show who have built massive investor networks, people who are hard money lenders doing literally millions of dollars in deals every single month, not years, every single month. And so it's been incredible to bring all of that knowledge and really learn from people. And it's helped my portfolio a lot. I've grown probably double the portfolio just by doing the podcast and listening to smart people.
I mean, like you're just listening, right? You're like, oh, okay, this is,
it's like, oh, you can do it that way. Okay, let's try it. And then it works. So it's been valuable. I don't know when this is going to come out, but I'm actually definitely going to lock the podcast down or shutting the podcast at the start of 2026. But,
Oh,
all the episodes will be available for people to listen to. I just want to really focus on Decision Alpha, focus on
yeah,
growing the business. So,
I
but the
understand.
podcast is there. Everyone can access and learn and listen to it. It's
Yeah.
still very helpful information.
What I find fascinating about this, even with this podcast, and to your point, is all this information that people are willing to give out for free, right? So here they are, you're listening, and 9 times out of 10, it's somebody who's done very successful, such as yourself. And then you're like, yeah, this is exactly either download my template, which you have, on your website, or they're talking to you, and you should be taking notes. You should be absorbing this information, right? Because all this information that these people have done and the pitfalls that they've, had to suffer to get to where they have, you can literally avoid those things, which is also what you talk
Yeah.
about as well, too, because you're like, hey, this is what can trip you up and this is what you need not to do.
Yep. Yeah. It is. And actually, there's many podcast episodes where I'll go back and I'll listen to it over and over and over and over again until like I understand what it is the person is saying and the nuance in their words.
Yeah.
And that helps me know, okay, this is where I'm going to start from. So I think like podcasts like this are an extremely valuable tool, but only if you take action. Right. If
Of
you
course.
just listen and don't do anything, then like don't waste your time. Right. But if you're going
Of
to take
course.
action, if you're going to say, I want to start here, and with action comes a willingness to like fail, right? You might try it doesn't work out,
Oh,
you
yeah.
go back to bat, you try again.
Oh, yeah.
But a lot of people are so scared of failing that they never actually like try anything.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest waste because you don't know what could have been.
Yeah, I think, I've had to said this to numerous other guests. The hardest thing is getting out of your own head, right? Because then,
Yep.
It's funny. We're always curious as children, but then we get less curious. It's frowned upon a curiosity when you get to be an adult, because then you start becoming more insecure, and then it starts looking like, well, why would you want to do that? And so, one of the reasons, I've talked to a lot of fascinating guests, and this is definitely at the top of my list because, when you talk to entrepreneurs, it's not like there's a book that says this is where you need to price your service at to stay sustainable, right? And a lot of times people are, to your point, they're using outdated information or they're just guessing in their respective zip code, and you don't know where you could be selling, locally or globally, right? And so you have to be agile and not get caught in, your segment or your business, because to your point, if you have a SaaS product, you could be selling to a very high end, larger scale company that's utilizing your service. I'm sure Microsoft has a different pricing for massive, large companies as opposed to the small business that's using, Microsoft Office, for a 10-person team.
Absolutely. It goes back to that understanding your customer segments, understanding how they use your product. Microsoft, that enterprise level user might be like, we've got 50,000 people who are going to be using your software. Every time they need something from you, you need to be on the phone with them right away.
Absolutely.
So it's not just, whereas the small person team is comfortable with, put me on a waiting list, respond to me in 3 days, that's fine, right? So that level of use is different. So we always talk about, it's not just that you're pricing to different customer types. You're looking at how do they use your product and interact with it, and you're pricing based on those use cases. That's what's important. That's what matters. That's why doing this research is so critical.
Right. The person that closes their doors at 6:00 on Friday and doesn't open back up till Monday at 9:00 is much different from the global firm that needs 24-hour access, and you can price accordingly based upon their 50,000 member team.
Exactly.
It makes a lot of sense. So what I was curious about, just briefly, is that how did you learn to blend, psychology and financial acumen? Because, when I was looking at your background, you were at Fidelity, and they have behavior economists. And oftentimes you think of banks and you think of financial institutions. You forget about modeling human behavior and characteristics because you think that they just make financial transactions.
Well, the thing about money is, so when I worked at a Commonwealth Bank, we used to joke that you're more likely to change spouses in your lifetime than you are to change your bank. Like most people, you get a bank, that's it, right? So financial institutions actually are quite sticky. They're very sticky, and everything who we are gets reflected in our money, what you spend on, how you save, all of those. Your personhood. If I looked at your credit card statement, I would know who you are, pretty much.
That's amazing,
right?
For sure.
So all of that data is really important because then the financial institution can look through it and go, okay, this is somebody who has a proclivity towards saving, this is somebody who has spending issues, etc. And it's not just, buying and selling, right? So Monzo Bank in the UK had this really cool intervention where they noticed that there was a segment of their users who would get on the app at night and just like spend massively, spend like fast, spend quickly, very
Wow.
like here, like, 20 purchases in a span of an hour. And then would call them the next day and be like, hey, like, can you cancel? Can you help me out here? And they realized that those people may be manic depressives,
Right.
right? There was something going on from a mental perspective, which is why they would get on and just like, ooh.
Impulsive.
And
Yeah.
so
Once. Yeah.
exactly. And so what they did was come up with a an intervention where when somebody is starting to show those patterns of behavior, they'll go, hey, are you okay? Like,
That's amazing.
we're gonna
That's amazing.
put a block on this for a while.
Yeah.
Just, we're gonna
Yeah.
lock your card for an hour and then we'll unlock it, right? Something like that. In
To
the
stop
Commonwealth
that
Bank,
immediate behavior.
exactly, because they could recognize that this is a pattern of this is a normal behavior. Commonwealth Bank, when they had that open banking, they noticed that people would send like small amounts of money with the nastiest like commentary,
Yeah.
right? Like it was a way for them to abuse each other. It was like people going through like somebody in a partnership who's experiencing some form of abuse, and the partner
Oh
would
wow.
send like 2 cents and like write in the nastiest, most degrading, disrespectful thing. So you can imagine maybe that's somebody who's blocked on all other platforms, but they are
Mhm.
still able to send money to this person, and that's a way for them to like send that abuse,
Oh my
right?
God.
So they came up
That's
with a
terrible.
tool to stop that. Other
Yeah.
banks have worked on stopping gambling spend, all sorts of different things that
For
are
sure.
we're actually using by knowing what people are doing with their money, it helps us actually improve the quality of their lives, right?
Right.
So answering your question around how does the psychology play into the finances, it is that link. Your money is your life. That's
Yeah.
the truth. And
Right.
so by having and
Amazing.
understanding
The
that,
question. Yeah, it's
yeah.
just, when you see that there's divisions in that in financial firms, you almost have to sit back and say, well, I didn't know that division existed, but it makes
Hmm.
sense the way you articulated that. And, it's very, very good that they have things that are stopping abusive behavior and self-destructive behavior
Hmm.
for their clients, because then they're more likely to stay as you as a client. And then more importantly, that keeps those companies out of litigation and fraud and out of the press for bad press. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because
Yep.
I'm sure that bad news of somebody who didn't authorize certain charges that had a certain health or medical condition doesn't go over very well when it comes to being on the
The
nightly news.
regulators, no, it
No,
doesn't.
no, it's not gonna.
Not
Not
at
at
all.
all.
No, no. Nobody wants to have that conversation.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Especially over $500 spent on Amazon. So I've always asked this of every guest, and it's not because they're not well known before they come on here, but for the purpose of this show. Where can they find Etinosa Agbonlahor?
You can find me at decisionalpha.co. So that's the way it's spelled, decisionalpha.co. If you want to have us take a look at your pricing, we
Yeah.
do have free pricing audits every Monday.
Wow.
So folks who are business owners who are thinking through, am I undercharging? Am I at the right place? Like hop on a free call with us. It's 15 minutes.
Yeah.
It's usually on Mondays. And they can access that if they just go to our website and like send us a message.
That is fantastic. And I have to ask, do you help customers, US based or globally? Can anybody reach out to you?
Yes, we're global.
That's fantastic. I would imagine with your background, you certainly wouldn't be restricted. And I find this very fascinating because I don't get a chance to really talk to a behavior economist in my everyday conversations. And I'm truly humbled that you were willing to take time out to be on my podcast and share your knowledge with my audience. So for that, I'm extremely grateful.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, it has been an absolute pleasure. And I look forward to any further conversations we have. Thank you so much for being on the Randomness of Nothing podcast.